Today we're going to show you how to build a full AI SaaS marketplace from scratch with zero coding experience. We're going to use Lovable for the front end website, N8N Automations in the back, and even allow to process payments using Stripe and link all of the data together so that it works as a full functioning SaaS using Supabase in the database. If you're someone like me with pretty much zero coding experience, then this must sound really exciting. How many times have you had an idea for something, but you gave up on it simply due to a lack of technical skills, no idea where to start, or not enough money to hire developers? But what I'm about to share with you in this video might change all of that for you. And by the end of this, you'll be able to turn your idea into a full AI SaaS that you can monetize and sell to others. And by the end of it, you might just have built a fully working MVP version of your business idea 20 times faster than you could before at a very low cost. We'll show you some examples of what people are already building using this exact technology and how they're monetizing it to thousands of users. We'll give a simple overview of how the whole thing works, interacts with each other and each tool. And we'll give a step-by-step guide on how you can turn your ideas into a full app that you can monetize. So we're talking payments, data, website, backend, the whole lot you'll be able to build by the end of this. But a quick disclaimer, as you guys know, I try my best to give you all the information that you need to know without the hype, just practical solutions. So would you be able to build $1 million SaaS using this? Probably not. But that's why I recommend watching this video until the end so you can see what is possible and what's not possible and exactly how to capitalize on this opportunity, especially if you're like me and you don't have an insane stack of technical skills. So let's jump straight in with some examples of what you could build by the end of this. So we've got Agent AI first. It calls itself a professional network for AI agents, but it's a web app where users can add their own AI agents. You click into them. So for example, this company research agent, and you can pay to use that AI agent. So on the back end, that would just be an N8N automation, for example. And on the front end, the user is able to click through and put in some inputs and receive an output from our agent there. This website alone supposedly has above 500,000 users, and you can see this agent alone has above 25,000 tasks completed for that specifically. We've then got websites like Relevance AI, which is a very similar concept. Build teams of AI agents that deliver human quality work. So if we go to the agents here, we've got all sorts of different agents. For example, CRM enrichment, where if you sign up, you can effectively input a prompt, input some inputs, link it to your data, and run that exactly in the same way. We've then got more specific marketplaces that are suited towards, for example, voice agents. So we've got retailai.com. Supercharge your call operations with voice AI. So again, it's a similar product where they've got various specific voice agents that you can use, like receptionist, appointment setters, lead qualification. That's all on the front end, and on the back end, they're just running an automation that takes our inputs and gives back to the front end our outputs. We're going to build something exactly like this with two clear examples so that you can go away and build an AI SaaS marketplace for yourself or for other businesses. So let's look at how we're going to implement that. And this is all with zero coding. So we'll run through step by step exactly what we need to do. But first, let's look at how the web app's going to interact with the different components and what those components are. So we've got a front end here. So the front end is just what the website looks like and the user sees on the front end. So if we go back to Agent AI as an example, this is the front end website for Agent AI. And every time we go into a specific agent, we've got another page in this URL that's part of our front end. So we're going to build out our front end with Lovable. And Lovable is your superhuman full stack engineer. So let's have a look at lovable.dev. And it's all about creating an app from an idea in as little time as possible with zero code. So Lovable, we can prompt, like we do with an LLM or ChatGPT, to create a full stack web app for us where we can connect to all of our integrations in the back end. And we can start for free with Lovable. And then when we hit the capacity limits, we can upgrade to $20 a month. So for replacing a full stack development team, $20 a month, $50 a month is very, very cheap, and it performs very well, as you'll see. So we're going to have Lovable on the front end, and every page we click through on our website is going to be built by Lovable, but it's also going to set up those integrations with what we need on our back end to actually make this happen. So we've got the front end in Lovable. Now let's look at the back end. So 3 core features will make up our back end, and this will depend on what you want to build. For a full AI SaaS marketplace, we're going to need 3 things. We're going to need the AI automations running in the backend. And for this, we're going to use N8N. We're going to need a database that stores all of our user data so that users can log in and we can track their usage of the different tools and therefore charge them for it and make sure they're not exceeding their limits or credits. And finally, we're going to need some way for them to pay. So we're going to integrate Stripe with that. And all of those are going to interact together. So when a user clicks a button on the front end to log in, it's going to either force them to register through a sign-up route, which will put their name and their details in our database in Supabase, or if they're already logged in and they're taking an action with a specific automation, then we want the database to update as that action happens. And similarly, when they first sign up for the first time, they're going to need to pay. And that's going to be through a Stripe link, but it's also going to be registered in our database, which is the middle linking to everything. And then finally, we need the automations to actually run. So we're going to use N8N for that. So let's have a quick look at each of these now before we delve into the specific automations. So we've got N8N.io here, which is an AI workflow automation software for technical teams. It effectively allows us to plug and play, drag and drop, and connect to all of these different softwares that we use, like Slack, Google Mail, our database, thousands of different software, but also connect to AI agents as well. If you're not familiar with N8N, then I'll link to my full 4-hour course, which covers everything you need to start building in N8N and everything I learned over 8 months of building over 100 automations in N8N. So that's where we're going to have our automations. Now, Supabase is effectively a database. So when you're using something like Airtable, that's also considered a backend database, but Supabase is much more scalable for web apps. So you can see here, build in a weekend, scale to millions. This is where we'll store all of our user data, including which users we've got signed up, but also their usage on different tools. And you can see as well here, Supabase is fantastic because you can get started for free. And then finally, let's have a quick look at Stripe. Stripe allows us to create quick, easy payment links and connect into different softwares. So Stripe is really good for things like international payments. So we'll use Stripe for everything payments related. Let's take a quick look at the automations. And I just wanted to quickly touch on how these are going to work and the technical infrastructure behind that. But it's actually really very simple when you understand the concepts. So they're all going to run by webhooks that are activated from our front end. So when we click a button, it's going to send the data to N8N, and N8N is going to receive that. That is effectively what the webhook is doing. It's receiving the data from the user clicking a button on our website. We're going to process the automations, and then we're going to send data back to display to the user, also using a return webhook there, so that our front end can receive all of the information pushed back by N8N. So today we're going to look at 2 specific examples that we can emulate from Agent.ai and Relevance.ai actual examples. So first, we've got a sales lead qualifier, which if we open it up directly on Agent.ai, it scores and qualifies leads based on scoring criteria. So a fairly generic overview there, but it costs 1 credit per execution and 4,000 people have completed tasks here. If we go through the process, it effectively asks us for an email, our criteria, and then returns this scoring criteria. We're going to replicate this on our own. And what we're going to input are a LinkedIn URL, criteria to score against, and it's going to output the same score against criterias with details. The second one, which is arguably a little bit more complex because we have to send a file, which is why I chose this as the second example, is extracting data from a PDF and summarizing. So if we go into relevance.ai.here, we've got a PDF studio where we can effectively upload a PDF file in the interface. It's going to send it to our backend in N8N. We're going to receive that file, extract information, summarize that information with an AI agent or LLM chain, and then return that information back to the user again. So we'll be dealing with more complex uploads there, and we might need some more complex tools in the backend, like an OCR tool to help read images off the PDF, for example. But ultimately, we're going to build out those two use cases today, step by step, so you can see how to do it. But this tutorial will give you the capability to build out any other AI or non-AI tools for yourself by showing you two clear, different examples of how we can use this and how we can set this up relatively quickly and maintain and edit it super easily. So now that we understand our infrastructure there, let's go down to the pathway that we're going to take to get there so that you can see what's coming up. First, we're going to figure out how to prompt Lovable to build the app that we want. We're then going to build out the automations in N8N. We're going to set up our Supabase database for login and for payments, and prompt Lovable again to change a few things there to make sure that works. We're going to have to set up the infrastructure on Stripe directly for our payments, and then we're going to iterate and test with one of those automations, and then we'll move on to the second automation following exactly the same process. So the bulk of the work at the start is going to be done in Lovable, and I want to create a prompt that can help us create the full AI SaaS marketplace that's really clear. So I looked up a few tips on prompting for Lovable to improve the way in which I prompt, and I found this Lovable prompting Bible, which you can search for as well. And all I've done is gone to my favorite AI tool, Perplexity, which is a web search engine powered by AI models in the backend. So powered by an LLM. And I've written out this prompt to give us a starting point of the prompt we're going to enter into Lovable. So it's just a starting point. It's not going to be perfect. We're going to need to refine it. But I definitely recommend doing this as well. So we've got, I want a prompt optimized for Lovable. Use the Lovable prompting Bible. It needs to be about developing a web app with a technical focus, clean homepage, so that I can have a similar look and feel. It needs to have a Supabase connection. Once users are logged in, they can see a page of the different automations that will be searchable. So similar to what we saw on our agent.ai page, you'd have various automations, but also a homepage as well to get them to sign up. And once they're logged in, you see those different automations. I've then talked a little bit about the functionality. You really need to be specific with the prompt here and what functionality you want from it. So a few things that came to my head. We need a place to log in, which is stored in Supabase. So we're just giving it a heads up that we're going to need to connect to Supabase. You need, as a user, to use credits to use an AI tool. The third one is each AI tool has some sort of input fields. So we'll define those later. But now let's just say they have input fields. And once the tool is used, first thing is credits should be deducted. So it needs to interact with our backend here. To sign up, they'll need to pay $20 a month, which will be connected through Stripe. So again, laying the foundations that we're going to have an integration through Stripe. And once the tool is used, it should send the input data to the webhook address and receive back the output. So we're telling it it's going to send some data on the click of a button and also receive back data from a webhook at the end of it. So it's a very short, concise prompt, but I've laid out clearly the functionality and the integrations between the different services there so that Lovable can go and set up a really solid starting point for us to go in, test, modify, etc. And it's come out with this really clear guidelines. So it's a full prompt optimized for Lovable. And by the way, if you want access to these prompts rather than creating them yourselves, head to school.com/scrapes, come into the classroom, go to the plug and play templates for your business. And you're going to go to publish recently, which is all of the templates published in the last week. And we're going to go to AI SaaS Marketplace. And you've got all of the prompts down here, and then all of the N8N files to work with as well to make it super quick and easy. So let's head back to the prompt in Perplexity. We're going to copy that, and we'll just stick with this first prompt first. We're going to take that to Lovable. We're going to make sure that we sign up. I'm sure if we click enter here, it's going to tell us to sign in or sign up. So sign up for free, sign into your account. And then once you're signed into your free account, you're just going to copy paste that into the chat box there, hit enter, and it's going to start building out our app. So the thing that Lovable is going to do for us is start building out the framework in code without us touching any code, the framework for a full web app. So normally if you were to build this, you'd need a full stack engineer, or you'd need to be a full stack engineer yourself to be able to write out all this code. But Lovable starts by just understanding your core requirements and turning that, as you can see, into code. So it will start writing all the code blocks, and you don't need to worry about all of this. This is just telling you that it's starting to work on your idea. It's probably going to take 5 or so minutes to fully write out the code, but it's effectively powered by an LLM in the background that's specifically tailored to creating website designs, but not only the front end of a website, which are quite easy to already make using something like Webflow or Framer, but it will start to integrate the backend functionality for us. And you can see, for example, it's starting to create the Supabase connection here. So we'll let that all load up. And whilst that is loading up, let's go to Supabase and start setting up a project there. So you're going to sign up to Supabase, and then you're going to start your project. If you've got no projects already, you're going to be in this dashboard page once you've signed up for a free account, and you're going to click New Project, choose the organization that it should sit in, and we're going to call it something like Lovable Demo. You're going to then save a database password and choose a region, but just leave it as the default, I would. And that will start creating a new project in Supabase. We're going to later need to take the secret keys from our project in Supabase and give that to Lovable so that it understands what database to connect with. And whilst that's still setting up, we can go up in lovable.dev to the Supabase connection here. We're going to click Connect to Supabase. And what that's going to do, if you signed up for Supabase and you're logged into your account, is allow you to authorize API access for Lovable. So we're going to give it access to the correct organization, and we're going to authorize that. And at this point, you're not going to be able to connect to any of the tables, because actually, if we go into View Tables, we've not set up any of our database tables yet. It's just a completely empty database in Supabase. So we're going to cancel that, come back. Let's see how our project's getting on. We've had our first error. So Lovable is really good in some aspects and then can error out quite often. So all we're going to do is just try to fix, and it's then going to push the error back to Lovable in order for them to start fixing the error. And if this doesn't work, we're just going to simplify our prompt and work at it a little bit at a time, give it a simpler prompt to start with, and then add functionality as we go through. So let's go back to Lovable now, and it's actually identified the error for us and started a fix on that, and actually now output our first view on what our marketplace SaaS would look like. And it's not bad for a first go. We'd obviously prompt this to improve the UI, change the marketing copy, etc. But we've got unlock the power of AI with a simple credit system. So not really selling the value there, but the description underneath is not bad. Access a marketplace of premium AI tools with a flexible pay-as-you-go credit system. No commitments, just a powerful AI at your fingertips. So it's really understood the brief and created this nice header on the homepage. It's then got a link to view all the tools with a little how it works. So purchase credit, select a tool, get results, which is exactly as we described. It's got a footer down here. Again, the color scheme needs a bit of work, but it's done a really good job. We've not had to build anything or build out any code. We've just clicked fix a few times and it's come here. So let's first click get started. And you can see that automatically it's thrown us to a new page, which has the endpoint register, and we would register our account here. And it's also potentially set up our Google. So up here, we can click to go back into the various different pages. Let's go back to register. And it's also set up these other pages. So dashboard, tools, pricing, billing. Let's see if we can access any others right now. Okay, this is a really good example of where it's implemented some security measures here. So we've tried to access the tools or the dashboard, and it's thrown us back to the login page, which is exactly what we want if we've got a paid service. We want to be logged in, or we want our users to be logged in before they can access any private pages. It's then given us individual tools pages. So this tells me that in the back end, we're going to have multiple tools, each with a unique page, but following the same structure. We've then got a pricing page. Let's have a look at that. Okay, and it's followed what we said, but it's actually given us a few different options here. Let's see if the sign up free button works. And instead of using the Google OAuth here, let's see if we can sign up using an email. Okay, so we've hit an error here. Error signing up, failed to fetch. What we will do is let's just come down here. And I have a suspicion that this is because we haven't connected to our Supabase yet. So now the website is loaded. Let's go up to the Supabase connection in the top right corner. We found the Lovable demo project, and all we're going to do is connect to that project. Great, so it's connected. Follow the instructions in the chat to complete the integration. So let's go back to the project, and it's given us some additional instructions to follow to connect to Supabase. So it's encouraged us to just keep building and given us a few bits of information around user accounts, login, etc. But the one thing we're missing is we still have no tables inside our Supabase database. So let's ask it to do a couple of things. Let's ask it to fix the login page, and that's still not working. So it wasn't a Supabase issue, or it potentially was because there's no tables there. So let's tell it the errors that we're facing, and it will go into the code and fix that for us. So let's go back to our school page where we have the implementation plan in here, and it already set out a plan for what the different tables should look like in Supabase. So if I copy and paste that, we'll go back to Lovable. The first one we've already put in, so login sign up is not working, either through Google OAuth or normal sign up. And then I've put the name of the error in, and then I'll put, we have no tables in our Supabase database. Here's an example of what they could look like. Add any other necessary tables. And we'll just paste in that Supabase example set up there. And we're just going to let Lovable run through that and see if we come back whether the login and sign up errors are now fixed. So this is where Lovable gets really powerful because they have the inbuilt integration with Supabase. We don't even need to go to Supabase to set up our tables. If we were setting up a project through Supabase, we'd have to go to the SQL editor, and this is an alternative way to do it. We'd copy and paste in these table schemas, which is basically the different tables and how they link to each other and the data types. And we'd have to paste those into here. We'd have to run the command. But because they've got this inbuilt integration, it gives us the different tables that we've suggested, along with access policies. And you'll need to go through these because they won't be perfect, and make sure that these access policies are secure before you publish. Don't treat this like a production ready app. You still need to make sure that it's got the security policies, test out the website, test out all the different edge cases, see if you can break into your own website, because there may be a policy missing that means other people can access certain pages they can't, or people can access information from the database. So you need to go through it and check that as well, or use an AI tool to help you check those policies and understand what they mean. But we've got a few policies in here, like users can view their own transactions, user can insert their own transactions. So all it asks us to do is to apply changes. So that's going to create those tables in Supabase for us. So again, we don't have to touch a thing. And soon we'll be able to start building out the backend automations that can link to this. So first, let's just see if the generic sign up is working before we do anything around Google. So let's go to create account here, and it's come up with a cool little pop-up here, account created, check your email to confirm your account. And if we go back to our Supabase tables, so we can go to our database on the left-hand side here, you have a visual view. It's set up 3 tables for us. One is tools, one is profiles, so that will be our users, and another is transactions. So you can see that it's understood and started building out what our tables should look like and the links between those tables. And if in fact we go instead to table editor, we click into profiles, you can see that it's created a new user under my email, and it's given me 50 credits because it said on the free plan you get 50 credits. So it's got all of the information we need to start connecting us up there. It's missing a Stripe customer ID because it hasn't forced us to go through a paywall, which we'll cover. But you can see that it is now working the front end with the back end, which is really awesome and taken no time at all. So let's go back to Lovable here and let's sign in. So I signed up as well with a different email address here whilst the camera was off, and we're just going to log in there, and that will hopefully take us through to a dashboard. Great. So what we've got here is a dashboard. It's come up with error, failed to load tools, because we've not actually created any tools here, but it's actually predetermined that we've got a search bar here to search the different tools. It's understood from our initial requirements that this is like a tools marketplace. We'll be able to pick some tools, spend some credits on those tools. So it's given us 50 credits for the free trial, and we've got different categories that it's assigned here. So two things we're going to need to do here. We are going to need to, one, create some tools on the front end, but two, be able to connect those tools to our backend, which we said we're going to build in N8N, and enable the connection between the front end and back end. So let's start doing that now. So we're going to go into our workflows in N8N. And once we're inside N8N, we're just going to go to create workflow. And just to remind you, the automations that we're going to build here, we're first going to build a sales lead qualifier where the inputs are a LinkedIn URL and criteria that we're going to score against. And it's going to output for us a score against certain categories that we give it using AI. And the second one is uploading a file, extracting data from that PDF and summarizing it using AI and sending that back to the front end. So within our workflow, we'll just call this Lovable sales lead qualifier. And all we're going to do is open up the tab here of tools, and we are going to click on the webhook. So we're going to receive a webhook from Lovable to this address, and let's first just test that that actually can be set up for us. So let's take the production URL from here, and we're just going to make sure that workflow is saved. And we're going to ask in Lovable to create two tools, and we're just going to say create one tool, a sales lead qualifier with an input field of LinkedIn URL, and a second input field is a description of qualification criteria. These values should be sent to the following webhook address. And what I've done is taken the address from our production URL, copy paste this get address, but let's actually just change it to a post address because we're sending data. Let's leave all of this as is, but actually we can change this path here to sales-lead qualifier just to make it a bit more clean. Let's take that back to our Lovable environment and replace that webhook address. And then we've told it should display a descriptive text box with the webhook response when it returns. So what we're going to have here is the webhook that's receiving the data from Lovable when our user inputs and clicks next. We're then going to take some action. So for now, we're going to use the do nothing operation just to test it works. And we will have a webhook respond to webhook node, which will send the data back to our Lovable site. And what we're going to do is say respond with all incoming items back to the Lovable site. And in here, we're going to create a node or a set of nodes in N8N to qualify those sales leads. But right now we're just testing that the connection works. So let's ask Lovable to create that. And it has the webhook address in here. So it's going to go ahead and start making that. And then whilst it's doing that, let's duplicate this flow. And just to remind you, we were extracting data from a PDF and summarizing it. So let's just call it extract from PDF. Let's duplicate that flow. And again, we have the webhook, do nothing, respond to webhook. And we're just going to change the path here to extract from PDF. We're going to copy the production URL, and we're going to just have to make sure that if we're using the production URL and not the test URL, that we've activated the workflows so that they can actually receive the webhook trigger here. So again, at this point, we're just testing. We're not trying to achieve anything in particular apart from sending the data from the front end, received, do nothing with it, respond with everything that it's received back, just to check it displays on the back end as well. So I've come back here and it's told me that the build was unsuccessful. If you click into this, it tells you what was unsuccessful: cannot find name, skeleton. Did you mean selection? So there was just some build error, but what we can do whenever we get a build error is go up here on try to fix it. It's also given us a warning that a file here is getting too lengthy, but let's not worry about that. Let's just ask it to rebuild and see if it can get it done. So I logged back in and I noticed there were no tools showing, and it's had the error failed to load no tools again. So I've told it that, and it said, okay, the issue existed because in our database, there was no tools is featured column, and it was relying on that to exist to show the different tools. So it's given us the SQL code to add some columns to the tools table so that it can then apply those changes. So let's apply those changes and we'll run it and we'll see what it comes back. Okay, so after a few iterations of just saying the tool isn't showing a tool, it's added some sample tools to our tool table that are now showing in our, that we just accepted and told it to run it. And they are now showing in our dashboard. So we've got featured tools section and an all tools section, and you can see it's added 4 tools, but not the tools that we asked it to add. So let's go back up and just reiterate this prompt that we'd like it to create this tool. And then hopefully we can move forward with this tool and start testing it out. You can see that it's also assigned different credit amounts to these different tools, and it's done all of the user interface for us, so we don't have to worry about that. And it's even created descriptions, put it in different categories. So this is really cool and really quick. This would take you a long time to mock up by yourself and then create the database in the back end and all the data and the fake data, whereas this has done it super quickly for us. Even though it's a bit back and forth, it's going to save you a lot of time if you want to create a front-end website that interacts with the back end. So let's create this tool and then start testing if it interacts with our webhook. And one thing I will mention here is, whilst we were going through that process, it asked me to upgrade and said I was nearing my daily limit. So if you're going back and forth trying to create something complex like this, you might have to upgrade to the $20 per month once, but arguably that's well worth it for the functionality you get and the time you're saving. We've now got the tool appearing in the all tools, and it's given us a little description here. So let's click through, and what we can see here is we have a description: qualify sales leads based on LinkedIn profile and custom criteria. So very appropriate. It's got an about section, and we can see there's a few options here. It's a sales tool. We can go back to the dashboard, tells us about the credits per use, gives us another description, and then it has a run tool. Makes it very clear that we're going to use 8 credits to do so, but obviously we haven't set up the functionality to take away the credits, so I'll be interested to see if it does that correctly. It's got the LinkedIn profile URL with an example in here that we could insert, and then it's got the qualification criteria, which we enter a specific criteria to qualify this lead. So actually it's done a really good job of setting up this interface so that we can pass inputs in. Let's actually try and put some inputs in here. Let's add my LinkedIn profile just as an example and see if our webhook actually receives it. And we'll see this in the executions inside N8N. So I've added in my LinkedIn URL and just added test qualification criteria. Let's click Analyze Lead. It said it's processing, and it said there is a problem processing your request. Please try again later. Let's go to N8N, and it seems like something has run. So let me come back inside here. Inside our executions, we'll be able to see if the data was received. And the issue was not that the data wasn't received. It actually seems to have received the data. It's just that we had respond immediately rather than use the respond to webhook node. So let me just come in and change that to respond to webhook node. And we'll do the same on the other tool as well whilst we're here. Let's save that. Let's go back. Let's give it a go again. Analyze lead. And it's processing, and it's actually come back with an output straight away. So it's actually received a webhook response. So let's go into the executions. Let's see what's happened here and check that we're actually receiving the data correctly and that it's sending back correctly. So we've received the body, which contains the LinkedIn URL and criteria. So that's amazing. It's got all of these headers, which we're not really concerned about. It says that it's coming from the Lovable project, but effectively we are sending and receiving the data. And also we have sent back the LinkedIn URL and criteria. So we've sent everything back, and you can see that we've received the body back of the LinkedIn URL and criteria. So that's awesome. The webhook is actually working. So now what we need to do is build out the workflow to actually do something for us, like sales lead qualification. So whenever we want to use an app that we know isn't inbuilt into N8N, for example, here we are trying to scrape LinkedIn profiles, we're going to come to something like Appify that has a whole list of user-built nodes that we can connect into, or APIs that we can connect into. An alternative to that is finding a solution that's another external API that scrapes LinkedIn profiles or does the exact thing you need. But here, we've just got a list of lots of different options that we can connect to with one simple API call. So we're just going to type in LinkedIn profiles. That's what we're looking for here. And we're going to find a LinkedIn profile scraper like this one, 2.7K users, 4.8 out of 5. That seems like a good bet. You'll be able to try this for free. And with every plan on Appify, you get a free plan up to $5 usage for free. And you can see this one charges $10 per 1,000 results. So you could get 500 results on your account for free here. But when you're creating a paid SaaS anyway, you're going to have paying customers. So this might be easier than going out and building your own LinkedIn profile scraper. So let's hit try for free on this one. And I'll show you now how to set that up in N8N. So I've previously looked here and we've added some profiles. So we've got Bill Gates here and my profile here. And all we're going to do is we're going to go back to the Lovable N8N backend sales lead qualifier flow. We're going to open up a HTTP request, which allows us to connect to any API. And we're just going to make this a post request because we're going to be sending data. We're going to find the URL. For this case, we don't actually need the authentication because I'll show you pass it in the URL. We pass our API key, and then we're going to send a body, which are going to be the profiles that we want to scrape for that. We're going to make sure that's JSON, and we're going to go and get that from Appify now. So inside the Appify scraper, we go to JSON here in the inputs, and you can see that it gives us the JSON that we need to pass back in our actor. So we're going to turn this into an expression because we want to change it to dynamic inputs in a moment, but we'll test it on these two profiles first. And then we're going to go back and we're going to hit integrations, use API endpoints. And what this is going to do is give us a few different options to run this endpoint, but it's also going to append our API token to the end. If you haven't set up an API token before, go into settings, in API and integrations, create a new token, and that will be the token that's created. You probably have one already in your profile. So let's go back to the actor, use API endpoints, and we are going to want to run the actor synchronously and get dataset items. So basically we want it to return the data and so we don't have to keep asking if the data is ready. We want it just run and return that data. So we've copied that here. We're going to paste it into our actor here inside the URL, and I will delete this token afterwards because you can see it just appeared in here as well. And that means we don't need authentication because it's already built into the request. So let's just test that and see if it returns the information from these two profiles successfully. And because we're doing two profiles and it was $10 per 1,000, this is going to cost 2 cents. And at this point, we're just testing if it works. And you can see it's returned all of this different information. If we go to the schema, you can see we've got the connections, the number of followers, job titles, job descriptions. So a lot that we could use to qualify this person if it was a sales lead qualifier tool. So we've set that up in our Appify actor. So what we need to do now is say, okay, from the data we receive from the webhook, scan that information and do something with it. So let's just start adding some notes. And if you've followed my videos before, I always add notes so that when I reflect back on workflows, I understand exactly what's happening. So we're going to have scrape LinkedIn profiles in here. And then we're probably going to have another step where we qualify that lead against the criteria that's input. So for that, we're going to need an LLM node, which is effectively being able to chat directly with with AI. And we're going to need to give it a model. So we'll give it OpenAI chat model, and we'll connect to OpenRouter so we can access multiple different models through there. If you've not set this up before, check out the full course where we run through all of this, including what is an AI agent, how to use different LLM workflows, and everything like that. But if you're familiar, this should be fairly straightforward. So we're going to receive the data, we're going to scrape the LinkedIn profiles, and we're going to qualify the leads. Just going to rename this. And again, I like to name all of my nodes so that they're really clear. So this is going to be qualify leads. And we're going to define below the prompt in which we ask it to qualify those leads and tell it what it needs to return in response. So inside the qualify leads, I'm just going to write I've just written a basic prompt. You're a sales lead specializing in LinkedIn-based lead evaluation. Your task is to assess each lead based on their LinkedIn profile, which is the input, and rank them against the following criteria: job title and role, industry and company fit, professional experience and skills. For each criterion, provide a score 1 to 5 along with a brief justification based on the provided on the available information, and then we will just give it the inputs dynamically. Profile info, and we'll pass that in a second, and then criteria to assess against. And what we need to do for that is pass those in dynamically. So we can just go to a previous execution of this, a successful execution, copy to editor, and we'll be able to see the content that we passed in, the LinkedIn URL and criteria. So inside here, we are going to have the criteria from our initial webhook. Let's put that in here, and that's the criteria it's going to assess against. And then for profile info, we've got a couple of options here because we're going to receive potentially multiple profiles in a list. So what we want to do first is let's just test a single profile. So let's pass in the LinkedIn URL here inside the body. And you can see that that's populated dynamically. We just drag and drop that over. And then if we just have one, it's going to be relatively easy because we're passing through one here, one output here. So let's test it with one first, and then we'll show you what to do if you want to qualify multiple leads at once. So we need to make sure that we're pulling in the profile info here as well. So let's say from the webhook.item.json. And this, if you haven't done the full course, is just reaching into the previous inputs. .body, .linkedin URL. And you can see now, if we open this up down here, that it's passing in the profile info. That's actually incorrect. I need to pass in the response of the Appify actor. So let's just deactivate these. And what we can do is just run this so that it pulls the data from the Appify actor. And we've got an error here. JSON needs to be a valid JSON. So let's remove the speech marks from there. And there's still an error here. So let's dig into this. It will be the comma here. So let's put the speech marks back. You should have a comma between the items, but never at the end of an item that is never on the last item. So now you can see it's a valid JSON object. That's going to run and return the data, hopefully. There we go, we've returned the data. And now what we're passing into the qualify leads will be any data we deem suitable. So ideally, what we want to do is aggregate all of this information and pass it in as a single item. So what we can do is just go back into our prompt, and instead of doing this, what we're going to do is $JSON to JSON string, and that's just going to convert everything we've received into one parameter. There are other ways you can do this, like the aggregate node, or just pull the information you need, like the set node. But let's just run this on a test locally before we interact with Lovable. And you'll want to just pin the data once it's run so that you can pin it whilst you test, so you're not being charged every single time. And that will just run the same information. And it's returned multiple items here. Simon is the founder of Automake. As a founder is likely the key decision maker. So it's assessing against criteria, but obviously our criteria that we put in was terrible. It was just test criteria, but it should only be returning one item in the output here. So let's make that clear in the output format. And in fact, what we're going to do is a method where we can just return without a specific output format. So let's delete these, and let's see, this time it will return one output format, but for multiple leads, we're going to make a few amendments in a moment. Okay, so it's returned one output format, and let's actually test this with a profile URL using the webhook, and that will actually respond to the webhook. Then let's add multiple. So let's go back to Lovable. We will go into our tool, and we're in the dashboard, and we'll go back to the sales lead qualifier. And if we go to run tool, we know that we can put in our LinkedIn URL and our qualification criteria. And let's unpin the data here, unpin it in this test, save the workflow. And all we're going to do is put in the LinkedIn URL that we want to scrape. So I've put looking for co-founders who have marketing experience to advertise our marketing tool to. So this is qualifying my profile against that. So what we're going to do is analyze that, and it's going to run through, and we'll see this in the executions of the tool. It will run through here. So it's going to scrape the profile. It's going to qualify my profile based on the information it receives against that lead. And then it's going to return that, hopefully, to Lovable. So we'll go back to Lovable. Yes, it doesn't look brilliant, but we can format that output. But it's got all the content. So the output is displaying. So it's returning all the data as we saw before. And it's given different scores. So actually, okay, professional experience and skills, score 3. Simon has a solid technical background with significant experience in operations and automation, true, but his marketing experience is not explicitly outlined in the skills or endorsement on his profiles. His past roles have involved scaling delivery operations and automating processes, which can translate to insights into marketing and user engagement. However, specific marketing skills appear to be lacking, making this aspect of his profile somewhat less compelling for advertising your marketing tool. So actually, it's done a really good job of kind of reading the profile, analyzing it, and returning that data. So you can see that you could offer a tool like this to a user, but one thing you've probably noticed is that the credits have not gone down. So something is not working in terms of when a tool is used, updating that in the database, which is really important when you're trying to charge users for a tool that's based on credits or number of uses. One quick thing we're going to do is just make this a bit more useful, able to scrape multiple profiles at once and return information based on that. And then we will deal with the credits not updating and move on to our second automation before we finally set up the payment. What other tools you could sell with this kind of SaaS? So let's say we have a comma separated list as the input. What we're going to do is use the edit fields or set node, and we can just say, okay, based on the input, we're going to need to grab the LinkedIn URLs, but perform manipulation on them. So let's call this URLs, not URL. And we're going to say, okay, turn this into an expression. So it's going to be a JavaScript expression. And what we are effectively saying here is if you have multiple inputs under LinkedIn URL, which would come through our field, then we're going to separate by the commas, and then each URL, so each item in that, by comma, we are going to remove any white space, and then we're going to join it by these quotation marks, but also a new line between it. So it looks complex, but actually I've just used Perplexity to talk through the formatting that's in the input and the formatting that is the output. And it's helped me come up with this N8N expression that's going to work the job for us. So let's go with an example of multiple and check that just up until this point it's working correctly. So if we go back here and let's put in a comma and let's put in a second LinkedIn URL, and let's just use Bill Gates again. So we've got two URLs here. Let's send that to be analyzed. And for some reason, there was a problem processing the request. So let's go check if the problem was inside our workflow. I see. So because we've disconnected this respond to webhook flow, it's not worked correctly. So let's just connect this back up and try it again. And it should now start processing that. If we come back to N8N, we'll see in the execution history what's happened here. So you can see that it's received multiple items and it's actually split them exactly how we need for our Appify input. So Appify has then got the incorrect input, but if we just drag LinkedIn URLs across here, that should work correctly. So in the Appify actor, let's go back to executions. And this is a great way to test things, by the way. You can copy this to editor. And now we can see, okay, instead of putting this in here, let's just dynamically pass in the LinkedIn URLs. And we can see that it would populate exactly like we need in our Appify actor. Now to process multiple of these, so this is going to pass multiple items to our Qualifier lead, which is then going to pass multiple responses back to the webhook. So to pass it as one single response so that we give a response based on all of our inputs. In fact, let's go back and test it and I'll show you exactly what it does. If we put input multiple, let's analyze lead, which is running the tool again, and that's processing. And you can see in the executions that it is running. And actually, that's worked better than I thought it would. I thought we would need some additional method here to get the response in here, but it's actually given us the response for both of those. So we've got that back in here. Now, obviously, the format that it's returning in is not ideal. And we could do some extra formatting steps, but for this demonstration, it's about actually passing that data back. We could do some extra formatting steps. We've got plenty of community resources about reformatting data, so we won't touch on it here. But basically, we've got our first SaaS tool that you could sell to other people, which is our sales lead qualifier. And it didn't take any time at all. Most of the time is in the setup and waiting for Lovable to run and then iterating back and forth with that. So that's really cool. Let's go to our second one here, which is extracting data from a PDF. What we're going to do is set up this one exactly in the same way, but touch on a few things about file transfers. And then we will look into the credit system and how to make sure that that updates so that your users aren't abusing their API keys, or so that you can charge credits for using certain tools. And then let's also look at applying a pricing gate so that users have to pay to sign up, and it will confirm in the backend that they're signed up and paying before it allows them to use the tool. So the key things you need to make it into a proper SaaS. So again, let's go back to Lovable and let's just test if we receive the binary data inside the webhook and also can send a file back, because we're going to need both of those functionalities potentially in the future. So we'll go back to the Lovable prompting. And similar to when we told it exactly what we needed for the first tool, let's do exactly the same for the second tool. So I've started prompting it here, and I've just decided to be fairly generic at this point and not give it much instruction. So I've just said PDF extraction tool, and it's identified in Lovable that we want to create a PDF extraction tool that can pull content from PDF files. And it said, okay, to do that, let's add certain things to the database. So let's approve those changes. The one thing we'll also need to do is enable a user to upload a file. So we might have to prompt it that as well. So let's see what this does first. So it's already said, now that we've successfully added the PDF extraction tool to the database, I'll create the PDF extraction tool functionality. So that's not what we want to do here. but we do need to allow the upload of PDF files. So let's see what it makes and then modify it from there. And as you can probably already tell, I'm regretting being so vague in my inputs. So I should have been more specific. I need the user to be able to upload the file in the inputs, not do the extraction itself. The file should be sent as data to the following webhook. And I've given it the webhook from our production URL, and we will update that there so that it can actually send the binary data file or the PDF to that webhook. Let's let it edit, come back and test the tool out. Whilst we're doing that, we will add the ability to download the file. So we've got the extract from file here, and if we're just doing basic extraction, we can actually just connect up this to the webhook, extract from PDF. The input would be called data. And again, we're just going to add an LLM chain because all we're going to do is ask it, based on the inputs, summarize the content in the PDF. So we'll put notes on a workflow in a moment. But for now, let's just connect the same as we did before to OpenRouter or OpenAI, whatever your preference is, through there. And in the prompts, let's say to summarize the incoming PDF data. And obviously, if you were building out these tools, you want to add in your own prompts. This is just a demonstration of the capabilities of sending files to and from our web page that we've built with Lovable. And we'll reference the correct data point in a moment once we understand the data is being sent through. So we know this is going to fail at first. It says the PDF extraction tool now uploads files directly to your specified webhook. When a user selects a PDF file and clicks the Upload PDF button, it's sent to our webhook. And the response from the webhook is displayed in the text area below. Great. So let's go into our tools in the dashboard. And we've got PDF extraction, costs 5 credits. Again, given all the details here. Let's go to Run Tool, and it's given us an Upload PDF file option, which is awesome. When we click it, it opens our most recent files. And let's go to this file in my Documents AI Explorer Roadmap, which is one of the files you get when you join the school community. It's like an onboarding guide. So let's see if it understands that file. Let's click Upload PDF, and we know already it's going to fail in N8N. So we just want to see what the error is there and also what data is being passed through. So a lot of this is going back and forth, just testing. There we go. The errors come up. And great, it's actually sent the PDF file, but it's called it file, not data. So all we need to do is either tell it in Lovable to change it to data when it sends, or just call this file, and that's absolutely fine. We'll extract from the file. Now we will be able to tell if we run it quickly again. And it's often better to just open this into a new tab because this keeps refreshing in this window. So you can open it in a new tab and refresh instead. It's probably going to save you a bit of time. If we refresh that here, we can see it's the correct tool. So there was an error there, which is probably coming from our N8N environment again. Yes, it was. And that's because we don't know what data is being passed through yet. So we can see that it's passing through this text field. So again, let's debug in editor, which allows us to see the previous executions. Get rid of this, and let's just pull through the text. All we want is the text. And let's take this to the top, summarize the incoming PDF data, and we'll call this summarize PDF. As we always want to label this up, we'll add a few workflow notes, and again, refer to the longer 4-hour tutorial on N8N best practice for the reasons in why I do this. But when you revisit workflows or create lots of tools, this is going to be super helpful for you to reference what's actually happening. So we'll have summarize PDF. We'll have extract from file, and it should just upload text in response. So let's try it again. Upload the PDF. That's going to process. Let's see if it comes back with a summarize response. And again, the formatting won't be perfect because it'll be the direct output of our LLM node. But here we go. We've got a file that says extracted content, but it's also put it in an output. The AI Explorer Roadmap is a guide designed to help businesses leverage AI and automation effectively. It talks through all of the different steps that are part of the guide. So we've now successfully passed a file from a front end to the backend, summarized it using AI, and passed the response back. The final thing I just want to touch on here is like what happens if you want to pass the file back. So I'm going to put this should also be able to receive an output file back if one is passed, and to remove the extracted content section because it already had an output. We're going to run that. That's going to update that for us. So now we've got two working completely different AI SaaS tools in a very short space of time. You can see how quickly you can mock this up. If you come into the school, you can go into the classroom and the plug and play templates. And what you could do is use absolutely any of these to create SaaS tools for yourself. So we've got things like a meeting summarizer, so people could upload their meeting notes. You've got an email inbox agent. You've got scraping any website data. You've got the thousands of tools on Appify. You've got a voice planning agent, so somebody could upload their voice and it could plan something out for them. You've got competitor research, so you could input links. You can see the opportunities with all of these templates are endless when you combine it with the fact that you could then sell this as a product with dynamic inputs that will push outputs to your users. So it's really an amazing tool or an amazing tool set to use together. And I've created this with no experience in very little time. So we've come back now to Lovable, and it's saying the PDF extraction component now uploads PDFs to the webhook and it can also receive them back. So let's refresh our page here. And let's just go into our workflow here and test that theory. So let's connect it directly to our respond to webhook nodes. Let's just deactivate those. So the file should now be received and sent back. So let's see if that actually is true. So a lot of this is like back and forth testing to check things work, but you can see we've built a lot of different functionality, not just text back and forth, but also any files you wanted to upload. Really simple to do. So let's do exactly the same again. Let's upload the PDF, see what the response is. Interesting. So it's now come back and immediately it's downloaded the process document. So we have confirmed, if we look at the execution, that actually it did succeed. And what it's done is receive the file and send that file back. So we can send files back and forth as well. So let's just connect this all back up. And that is two working SaaS tools with very little time. This whole time we've been running on 50 credits, which is a big issue because if you're selling this to others, you want them to use their credits up as they're doing this. So we need to tell Lovable to take credits away when somebody's using it. And then also we need to implement a paywall with Stripe. So we're going to cover both of those now. So let's now talk about setting up a credit system that works. And if I just remind you of our diagram here, we effectively have the front end built. So Lovable is integrating with our backend. We've got two automations set up, and you can set up any automations like this and prompt Lovable, set up the N8N automation in the background. And we've got two automations already set up inside N8N. And like I mentioned at the start, you can implement absolutely any automations and have this as a tool on your marketplace or as a SaaS separately. Those are running now correctly. We now need to tackle these backend steps, which is making sure that when a tool is used, we log the usage for that user in particular, but also on a tool level. And then Stripe, we need to connect our account so that we ensure that users have paid to sign up to our service as well. So let's start with the database and ensuring that when we're using credits, which are just arbitrarily assigned at the moment, but we could go back in and change that, they're actually counting on the database. And then once we've used a certain amount, it should then tell us that we need to upgrade to a paid plan. So we're first going to go back into the database project. We'll go to table editor and we'll just have a quick look through the tables here. So we've got two different profiles that have signed up. So those were the two IDs I signed up with. We've then got the tools. So any tools that we don't want to appear on our SaaS, we can remove here because actually we've not generated any of these tools. And these are just ideas it's put in for us, but we have made the sales lead qualifier and the PDF extraction. So let's delete those 4 rows from the back end. We'll refresh here, which is connected to our database. We'll go back to tools, and you'll see now that only 2 have appeared here. We might not want this featured tools section, but it's not a problem for now. And again, we could change the categories, but we're not worried about that for now. So transactions in here, we have an empty database. So you can see that none of the users have been added here. So whenever a button is clicked in our app, like say we use the sales lead qualifier, it should actually deduct those credits if it's successful from our account. So once we receive a response or once we click the button, we should make sure that it's deducting that from our account. So we're going to go back to Lovable and just tell it that that's not happening. So I said each time a tool is run, it's not deducting credits from the user's account. Also, the user that's registered doesn't seem to have a transaction registered in the table. So I know this from our transactions table. We've got all the data in here, but actually none of it is being registered. So let's go back and let's process that with Lovable, and that's going to make updates to that. In the meantime, let's head to Stripe, where we're going to set up payments. So you're going to need to set up an account in Stripe. And once you set up a Stripe account, it will give you some instructions on whether you want to start looking at one-off payments or recurring payments. So here we're looking at recurring payments. So say pay $20 a month, get 100 credits, etc. And whilst we've been away, it's fixed the issues of credit deduction and transaction recording when tools are run. So before we set up the payments, let's just test the credits here. So we've got 50 credits here. And if we go to the profiles, we can see that we've still got 50 credits on our profile in the database. So there's 2 things that need to happen. It needs to update in the database, but also needs to update on our front end to show the user that they've used some credits. So we're going to refresh this here. And this says that it's going to use 8 credits per use. And in our backend database, we can see inside the tools that it's got a credit cost of 8 in there. So that's great. So we're going to run the tool. We're going to pass in the URL. We're just going to put some random criteria here, but because all we're looking out for is that it's updating our credits both in the database and on the front end. We will have to add logic to this that says if the user has 0 credits or not enough credits to perform the action, then they can't take the action. So we can see that this is not updated up here. Let's go to the database and refresh. And again, it's not updated here. Has it recorded a transaction? Yes, it has. So it's saying we used 8 credits and it gives us the input and the output, but actually our profile still suggests that we've got 50 credits. So the profiles has not been updated and nor has the front end. So let's go back to Lovable. So you can see how you pick apart these different problems and solve them one by one with Lovable's help. So I said the profiles table was not updated with the credit usage and nor was the display of credits on the front end, i.e. this part. And I've added here, make sure a user cannot use the tool, i.e. make them buy more credits or put them through the process to buy more credits if they don't have enough to perform an action. That's a critical step in our process because we want customers to be able to perform actions or guide them through the process to buy more credits to do actions. So let's send that. Let's see what Lovable comes back with and test that out again. Okay, so coming back here with a bit of persistence, it's now seems to be working. You can see it's updating my credits here. I just continued to say similar things about the database tables not updating. Eventually it got there. Let me show you exactly what it looks like. It's currently got a different issue, but you'll see these credits update. It will run, it will deduct the credits, correct amount of credits. The database tables will update. Let's see that update there. You'll see in the transactions, it's added a new transaction. However, it's not returned it's like refreshed the page too quickly and not return the output. So we're going to need to fix that. So we'll just say it updated the credits, everything's working, but I was awaiting the output, which never arrived, basically. So we're stepping in the right direction. The other thing I want to mention here is we have functionality now to deduct credits, but when you're building out a credit-based system or any sort of recurring revenue-based system, the database tables need to have a fair bit of functionality. If you come into the school, I've included a section on setting up an effective credit management system, including the back-end prompt here, the front-end implementation, and edge cases. So you can come in here and grab those prompts, and that will help you speed up the process and remove some of those errors when we're going through and trying to add this to the UI, because it will give more specific information to Lovable about certain edge cases and not just deducting credits, but thinking holistically about how the credit management system works. Okay, it's updated the states here. So let's try and run this again and let's analyze lead. Again, we're getting a similar problem. So it's not giving us our output. Okay, it is giving us the output, but it's throwing us back to the about page. So I'll just tell it to keep us on the run tool tab, and then it's going to make those edits. And then we're approaching our 0 on here, so we can test that as well. And at that point, we want to implement our Stripe payment link, which we spoke about previously before. We'll go and grab that Stripe payment link and integrate that as well. It should have updated that now. So let's go back to tools, try the sales lead qualifier, run tool, put in some criteria, analyze the lead, and it keeps us on the run tool. It's deducted our credits and it's going to give us the output. So it's now performing exactly as we expected. Let's start integrating our payment links here. So we're going to go back to Stripe. We're going to grab the link from our payment links section, and we're going to get Lovable to set up the payment links. So I've added this here. So when a user signs up to a plan or gets to 0 credits, gets to insufficient credits, get them to purchase through this payment link, and I've linked the Stripe link. It's the $20 a month plan and should give them 100 credits in the database. The backend should all be linked up so we know which user is paying and when it's paid. So let's see what it comes back with here. It might ask us to set up something on the Stripe side, as I believe we have to connect our Stripe account to the Lovable app here. There's a link missing. We need a user to pay, but then in our database, we need to link that user base back from Stripe based on their transaction to the user in our database. So I've followed up with how does this connect to my Stripe account and know which customers created a purchase. And it's given me a few extra steps to consider. We need to have a webhook handler to process Stripe events. So when Stripe sends the data that suggests a purchase has been made on a certain product, it should be received back by our SaaS so that it knows to update the database and it knows which user is associated with that transaction. And then along with that is the customer linking that I just mentioned. So to implement this properly, we would need your Stripe secret key. Do not share your Stripe secret key with anyone, and a Stripe webhook endpoint setup, and then edge functions to handle the webhooks and update your database. Would you like me to implement these Stripe integration components? All we need to do is say yes. So it understands the steps we need to take, and we can just ask it to take those steps for us. And we're going to go and grab the Stripe secret key here. An alternate way it may ask you to do things is to use the product ID, which if you click into the product, you can just grab from these areas and say, okay, this is associated with the AI SaaS 100 credits product as well, instead of using a payment link. And it might ask us to do that. So we've come back here and it says we need to create all of this stuff for you. First, I'll need your Stripe secret key. Again, I reiterate, do not share this with anybody, but it links to the Stripe API key page here. So once we've done that, it's told us to add the API key. So I've gone to that page, got my secret key, come back and just pasted it in here. We can submit that and now it's going to save it in the backend securely for us. Let's move on to the next step it asks us to do. So while that processes, just to be clear, this is the stage that we're at now. So we've built a front end and we've got the automations working on the back end. It's now deducting credits based on our usage. However, when we run out of credits, it's going to force us to sign up and pay. And right now we are connecting Stripe so that Stripe can interact with our database, which can interact with our front end, and everything is synced up so that our customers are getting a good experience and that also you can sell these SaaS automations or the process of running them in the backend to other people. Great. So it's taken our Stripe secret key and it said it's created a complete Stripe integration with the following features. It creates Stripe checkout sessions for subscriptions and one-time payments. It handles Stripe events. So whenever Stripe receives an event like a customer's paid, it will effectively handle that by receiving them back. It verifies a user's subscription status with Stripe. So everything we need it to do with Stripe, it's going to do for us. And it also is integrated with our existing Stripe customer ID field in our profiles table, if you remember in the Supabase table, and adds credits to users' accounts when they make payments. The UI updates, it's connected the pricing page to the checkout flow and updated a billing page to use real product IDs. So they need a couple of things. They need us to set up a Stripe webhook in the Stripe dashboard to point to our Supabase webhook endpoint. So basically we need to connect our database so it updates with Stripe where we detect that a user has made a payment, and we need to get the webhook signing secret from Stripe and add it in as a secret in the Supabase with the name Stripe webhook secret. We'll go through all of this and replace the placeholder Stripe IDs with your actual product price IDs from your Stripe dashboard. And it's actually linked us to all of the relevant resources. Let's first set up a Stripe webhook in our Stripe dashboard that points to our Supabase webhook endpoint. So we'll click on the Stripe webhook setup here. We're going to create an event destination, and then we need to find the endpoint URL. And then endpoint is effectively a URL that this is going to connect to, and it's going to hear our Stripe events. So every time a customer pays, Supabase is going to hear and receive data from Stripe, and that will update the database directly. So we'll open the Edge functions on Supabase, and it gives us these different webhook endpoints. So we're going to connect it to this URL or this endpoint, and I'll just go back there. And there's a little copy tab there. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to take it back here, and we're going to connect it to here. And we'll just give it a description here of Supabase Stripe. So we also need to select which events it's going to listen to. So Stripe has a load of different events for different things that we could take actions upon, but we're actually just looking for checkout session completed. So when a checkout session is completed, it has loads of sub events that we'd be monitoring and actually just detecting. So whenever a checkout session is completed, it's going to send that event, and we'll just go down there to add events, add endpoint, and that should now be set up. We'll go back to Lovable, and we need to get the webhook signing secret from Stripe and add it in as a secret in the Supabase with the name Stripe webhook secret. So we're going to go down here to Edge function secrets, and it's going to pop up with a page with all of our secrets here, and they're redacted at the end here. So we're going to need to put in, like it said, Stripe webhook secrets. And then we need to get the signing secret from Stripe and add it in to that value. So you're going to come back into your Stripe webhook page where you've created that here, and you're going to click reveal. You're going to take that back and copy that in just a second. So back in Supabase, you're going to put the Stripe webhook secret, and you've copied there. That is effectively connecting Supabase to Stripe. So we hear those events, and the secret is used to validate that it is receiving them in the correct places and somebody's not intercepting those events. And then finally, we need to replace the placeholder Stripe price IDs with the actual product price IDs from your Stripe dashboard. So let's go to our Stripe dashboard. Let's go to our payment links. Let's open this link here. And within the products, we will have an individual product ID. And I'm just going to copy that there. And I believe the price ID is the product ID here. And then it's saying once set up, users can subscribe or purchase credits, and your system will automatically track these transactions and add credits to their accounts. So this should be all set up in a second, and we'll be able to go in and test that. Okay, so the product ID is not the same as the price ID. So we'll go back into Stripe, go to products, go to the pricing section, and it should start with price. And actually, if we're in the product here, in the price, you can click on here and copy the price ID. So we'll copy that back into Lovable, and everything should be set up ready to test. So what we're going to do is go in and use our sales lead qualifier twice, and hopefully that starts to push us towards the checkout flow once we run out of credits. And just to reiterate, this is all on a test data account, so it's going to let us purchase without putting any funds forward. When we switch this to a production environment, you need to set this up again with those different credentials or just update them in the relevant places we have here. Okay, great. It seems like it's ready to test. So let's start testing again. Let's insert the LinkedIn URL here, and we'll run it twice to effectively run out of credits. Oh, we run it once. Okay, so great. So it's shown us this insufficient credits. You need 8 credits to use this tool, but you only have 2 credits. That's really nice that it's set all of this up and also linked us to the purchase credits. So let's try and go through this purchase credit route, and it's sending us to the payment link page. Let's see if it works. So we'll say it's getting stuck on the payment link page from the purchase credits warning button. It's probably not linked it to the correct payment page. So let's just get that fixed. Great. So it says it's updated the purchase credits button. Let's give it another go. Redirecting to payment. Error creating checkout session. You have to be very patient with a tool like Lovable, but don't forget that what you're doing is stuff that would take you, if you were a software developer, a considerably longer amount of time to actually do this. But each time you run one of these changes, it's going to take about 1-2 minutes to update. You test again, etc. But what you're replacing here is a very high development cost, and you can get a SaaS prototype up and running for very cheap. So it's definitely worth the time investment, and it's really cool, and I'm very impressed with the outputs here. There were always tools like Webflow, WordPress, Wix, etc. that could create good front ends, but tools that integrate that front end with the back end were very few and far between and often had a big technical barrier. But using something like Lovable completely takes away that technical barrier. You need a little bit of understanding of architecture, but other than that, you can do it just by prompting like you would with ChatGPT. So very impressed with it. So lesson learned here, that the issue actually was that the embedded window here inside Lovable was not showing the Stripe page. But when we opened up the page here, we go to tools, we try the same process, we purchase credits, it actually takes us straight to the Stripe page. So just a little bit of a learning there. And what we'll do is we will just enter some test details and we will hit pay there. And you can see that this is in test mode anyway. And that's going to process, and hopefully that will update in all areas. It will update our database, which will receive a notification that a purchase has been made. So it's thrown us back to the login page here, which is not ideal, but let's go to the database and have a look to see if anything is updated. So we can see that the database is not updated. It's also thrown us back to the login page, and we've got 2 credits still up here. So let's go to our Stripe developer portal, and inside the logs, we can see everything that's happened. So I can see that the checkout session loaded correctly, and then the payment methods endpoint was contacted, suggesting that the payment had gone through. If we go to customers, we can see that there is a customer in here with my name, and it's saying that the payment had succeeded, and it gives us details around that. If we go back to our database, we should have a Stripe customer ID in here, and it's still showing as null. So what we should do is check in our edge functions in Supabase. And if we click into the Stripe webhook, we should be able to see that something has happened here, and it has shown that something has been received. So there is a connection there. Let's go to the logs, and it's showing that there were a few errors. So great. So it has actually received the information. And what I'm going to do is just copy that. I'm going to go back to Lovable, and we're going to attach the image of the error. So I'm going to say went through on the Stripe side, Supabase seems to have received it like we saw, but then shows this error. Let's see if it can help us resolve this. And it seems to think it's fixed the issue now. So let's go and try again. In the tools, run the tool, purchase the credits, enter the test details. And I probably didn't say before, but when you're using a test account, this is a well-known test card information. So 424242, etc. You can put in any dates, but it's a Visa test card that you can use. It might decline other cards. And we'll process that there. So it's thrown us back into the login page. Let's refresh the database. Same problems. So let's go back and check what's happened here. And this time it doesn't seem to have received it. 439. Okay, it has received it again. And in the logs. And if we go to the overview here, I can see that something has happened. It's got a 4xx error, which usually means it can't find something. So if we go to invocations over here, go to this, which is my most recent run, and I'm just going to copy all of this metadata down here, take it back to Lovable, refresh the page, tell it it's not working again, just refresh. So got a 400 error in Supabase, copy that error code in and we'll see if it can tackle that. So we seem to be having the same issues here. So I've come into the Stripe dashboard and all of the payments that we've tried have succeeded in Stripe. So it must be, as a result, a connection issue between the Stripe dashboard and our Supabase database. In the logs that we were looking at before, it seems to show that things were executed, but they're always not found. So with some persistence, I've gone back and I've just refreshed all of those things we did before. Not sure why it wasn't working. I think we might have got it working now. So there's 6 credits in the account we're about to top up. We're going to add, again, some credits. And sometimes you just need to refresh. And let's see if that updates and hopefully tops up our credits here. So it's thrown us back, but we can see now, hooray, 106 credits. So we'll go to the tools and we're now able to use it. And if we go back to the database, we can see that it's 106 and we can see it's put our Stripe customer ID in there as well. So that is a success. We know that it stops us purchasing when we've not got sufficient credits, and now it's also connected to our Stripe customer ID. So hopefully now you can see that it's actually extremely easy, albeit takes a bit of time with prompting and reiterating and testing, to set up a full AI SaaS marketplace. And hopefully you've got some idea of the products that you could host on this marketplace. So today we just set up a sales lead qualification flow, as well as an extract from PDF flow. But looking at a marketplace like Agent.ai, you can see they have thousands, 98 pages of different flows. We've got things like pulling recent LinkedIn posts, a meme maker, fit to purpose image generator, industry analysis. So all of these things could be replicated with an N8N backend in a similar interface to this. It works with N8N in the backend, and your users could pay and come to one platform to access all of these tools. So the possibilities really are endless. If you're considering implementing this for yourself, obviously you followed the video through, but we've got all of the different prompts, implementation plans, the setup guide for Stripe payments, the credit management system. So we just did some basic stuff with credits that wouldn't stand up in practice. So we've got a full guide here on the different things that you might need to implement with Lovable and test to make sure that you could actually run this in production. Thank you so much for watching. Give this a like and subscribe below if you enjoyed the content and want to see more like this.